In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian's Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is Drew Hill, joined as always by Chris Herrington. 2-0, the Grizzlies are since we last spoke. They took down the Los Angeles Clippers and then turned around and beat the Portland Trail Blazers in what I thought was maybe the best defensive performance of the season for the Grizzlies in that game. So it's been... we're approaching the holidays. It's been pretty merry for the Memphis Grizzlies as of late. There's a lot of reasons why, but what do you think's been the main contributor, Chris, to this good run here?
I think there's a legitimate question, and I don't say this to poke holes in what they've done because I come out more on the positive side of it. But to me, it's a legitimate question: how much has the team gotten better, and how much is it a function of schedule? Because what is true of the Grizzlies in the 7-2 stretch was also true of the Grizzlies in the 1-9 stretch, and was also true of the Grizzlies in the 3-2 start, which is that they've beaten losing teams and lost to winning teams. Like, that is true across all phases of the season so far. With the only variance there is winning that I can think of off the top of my head was winning at Phoenix, a team that has a winning record. I think that's it, of the whole season. So how much is it just the schedule turned back again, and how much of it is that they've gotten better? I think it's some of both, but I think it's more the latter. And I think because this is not just coincided with the schedule, it's coincided with the return of Zach Edey.
Yes,
and it's clear that Zach Edey fundamentally changed the Grizzlies in some significant ways in terms of the rebounding and the defense in particular. And to your point about that, you think that was the best defensive game of the season, and it may have been. The defense has flipped since he's been back. They've been a top 5 level defense since he's returned, and on the season they're sort of pushing in towards the top 10. But since he's been back, and not just with him on the floor, not just in his minutes, but the totality of the team since his return has been a top 5 level defense.
Yes. Okay. I'm very glad you took it that direction, because that was the direction I was going to go. I think it's a good time to play what is real and what is not real for the Memphis Grizzlies on the pod this week. And I wanted to start with the defense because I think that everything that you pointed out is absolutely true. I pulled up some numbers before the pod. If you go back and you look at the Grizzlies before Zach Edey came into the fold, they ranked, I believe, 25th overall in points per possession defense, according to Cleaning the Glass. Then you turn around and you take the stats only since Zach Edey returned. They're second in points per possession defense per Cleaning the Glass, 109 points per 100 possessions, which is really good. Part of the reason that they've been so good is because I think it's sort of threefold here. One, they're not giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. They've actually had the lowest opponent offensive rebound percentage in the NBA since Zach Edey came back. So obviously the help rebounding is huge. They're not fouling as much because they have the lowest opponent free throw rate in the NBA since Zach Edey came back. I think part of that is just sort of the ability to eat up space. And then the other thing is, and this is the key piece, I think, to all of it. Opponents just aren't getting shots at the rim when Zach Edey's on the court for Memphis.
Right.
The lineup of Vince Williams, Cedric Coward, Jalen Wells, Jaren Jackson, and Zach Edey. So what has been a starting lineup, right, for this team for a while. Now, we're going to get into the Ja stuff because there will be a Ja return imminent, it appears. But that lineup ranks incredibly well defensively. 95th percentile in points per possession, 88th percentile in opponent effective field goal percentage. They're not giving up offensive rebounds. That's in part because you have 3 really good positional rebounders on the court together, but also because Zach Edey just deters people from getting to the rim. And the combination of Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson is one that has worked really well. The last stat I'll throw at you here, the last stat I noted, so I'm just burning up all the stats right at the beginning of the podcast, but when you look at that lineup that I just mentioned, the Grizzlies starting lineup that's played 211 possessions together, they're only allowing opponents to take 18% of their shots at the rim. That's in the 99th percentile in the league. If you just take all Grizzlies lineups that feature Zach Edey on the court this season, so 590 is what Cleaning the Glass has, they're allowing opponents to shoot at the rim 20.3% of the time. So that's frequency, not field goal percentage, but frequency, which I think matters a lot. That 20.3% is the best mark in the NBA. So it just shows you, holy cow, like Zach Edey has made a huge difference on this team, and it's incredible what he's done so far. You mentioned the ankle being the big factor, right? When he came back, you were just hoping that he looked like Zach Edey of last season, and if he did, like he was going to have an impact. I think that the big thing here is he's looked better than that version of Zach Edey. He looks quicker on his feet. And
No,
that's something they talked about at practice.
he looks much more mobile, and you wonder if the ankle surgery, I mean, it's meant to help it, right? You wonder if the surgery has been a help in that regard, and maybe because the reason he had this surgery over the summer was not in response to one injury. It was in response to a recurrence, right? And so you wonder if he was limited a little bit last year because he had a couple. He had one in summer league, which he missed summer league games with the turned ankle. Then he had one in season where he missed games, and then it happened again in the summer, and that's when they had the surgery to try to prevent it from reoccurring. You wonder if he was like not necessarily 100% last season because of the ankle sometimes, because he had a couple of issues with it. So maybe the surgery has actually helped him in this regard. Maybe the experience. I think certainly the experience and the reps and having more confidence and all of that. But the thing that was noticeable with Edey last year, because last year, if you remember, if you go back and look, they were great defensively when Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson played together. They were awesome defensively last year when those two players played together. But when Edey played without Jaren, they were terrible on defense. It went from like 99th percentile in cleaning the glass to like 7th. And you can see that on the stats, but when you watch them play, the biggest problem that Edey had last year defensively was not, he got called on a switch, he has to guard on the perimeter. That was actually not the biggest issue. The biggest issue was his those quick lateral reactions when drivers were coming at him. And his ability to keep up with the offense coming at him and react quick enough to contest or ward off the play instead of being a second late and getting beat to the rim. That was the problem last season, was that sort of quick lateral reactions as a paint defender. And that's the thing to me that has turned around completely, where he's getting to stuff and contesting stuff and blocking stuff that's not that he has to move
or just deterring entirely.
Yes.
Right? Like that's the other part of it. Just the opponents won't shoot it when he's right there.
It's that quick defensive reactivity in the paint that we're seeing much better this season than last season. And I also wonder about when you talk about like how much better they are with Edey on the floor. Well, part of that is how bad they were without Edey earlier in the season in terms of the paint defense. And to me, it's almost sort of flipped from last season. And in the numbers, it's flipped. If you look at the numbers, last season it was, they're good when Jaren plays. And this season it's, they're good when Edey plays. It's become that. The other half of that is like the Jaren presence alone has not elevated the defense. And one thing I'm trying to figure out is how much of that has been Jaren not being as good defensively this season, and how much of it is like the Jock Landale thing. And Lando's had some really good games on offense. He's frustrating because of the athleticism, and sometimes he can't finish a lob, but he gets deep post position. He scraps. He makes threes. He's put up some good stat lines. He's been good as an offensive player, but he is not. He cannot protect the rim. Like he's been an usher. Like, please, sir, can I escort you to your seat here at the front of the rim?
Right.
There's been some of that with Landale, and for whatever reason, whether it's Landale just not being able to deter anything or Jaren not being as good, the Jaren Landale lineups have been terrible, and so like the Edey thing is just really Edey's been awesome, and he's been awesome with Jaren. And then they haven't had to go. I mean, they were starting Jaren and Landale together, and they've gone from starting that together to like trying to avoid it. I wrote a little bit about that last week. In a certain stretch I looked at on that road trip where they went 3-1. Those guys were averaging like 4 minutes a game on the floor together, and previously they'd like started together. And so I think, Edey's been awesome, and then he's helped them have better lineups across the flow of the game. And now what I'm looking at is Jaren going to come around? Because when you say
that's the next question. That's the next,
yeah.
Real or not, we'll play it. Real or not, Jaren struggles. How much is Jaren? There's two ways of thinking that I've seen before we dive in. I've seen a little bit of Jaren's been too good for too long. I refuse to believe that this is a Jaren thing. They're not using him correctly, or something's going on here. And then there's well, Jaren may have just regressed. Jaren may not be quite as good. I think, there's two lines of thinking. What do you think about that? What do you think of sort of what I have seen out there in the universe?
Well, it's wishy-washy to say it's some of both, but I just think it is some of both, and I would separate out the offense and the defense a little bit. I think Jaren has just flat not been as good to a level that is on him primarily. I would just start and just say that first and then move on. I also wonder about the health stuff, and it's hard to know, but he had the offseason toe surgery. And then he had an ankle thing, and now he's wearing these ankle braces, which Ja and Cam Spencer are wearing too. And I wonder about how that impacts how you feel in the mobility and all of that. And I do think the way the offense is working right now, there's no play calling going on for the most part. It is a flow offense, and the ball flows, and the system works, and the ball goes where it goes. And there's not a lot of like, okay, ISO Jaren. And that's what he's been best at, like the ISO plays for him. And he can still get those same kind of shots in the flow, but he has to get it in the flow. And whether it's his own assertiveness or just the way the offense is flowing, it's not just him being bad. It's him not getting touches a lot of the time. I think the offense has flowed away from him. But the defensive end is what I'm sort of focused on. I know people are focused on the fouls and the scoring. I'm focused on the defense with him. Because to me, he should still be awesome defensively, especially when he's playing with Edey, regardless of what's happening on the offensive end. And I think that has not been true enough. But that Portland game that you brought up, I think it was. He had 5 stocks, 3 steals, 2 blocks, which is the most he'd had in a month. He had all kinds of other good defensive plays that didn't register stats. That just like, oh, Jaren contested that. He warded off that shot. I want to see him be awesome on defense, which he's been. He's former defensive player of the year. I want to see him just all over the place, contesting stuff and disrupting stuff and being a force on defense. And then the offensive stuff matters a lot, but I'll feel better about working that out if he's just awesome on defense.
Yeah, I agree. And so to revisit question number 1, which I think Jaren played a big role in, when you say, like, how real is this Grizzlies defense? I mean, I think it's very real. Like, I think that this is a team that's going to be, as long as they have Zach Edey out there, that this is something that's pretty sustainable for the team. Now, are they going to do this night in and night out against the best competition in the NBA? No, but like they're going to be much, much improved, and I feel pretty confident in that.
I mean, we're focusing on Edey as we should because he's sort of flipped it. But you look at the lineup they've been playing, and it's about to change, by the way. But the lineup they've been playing, when you're starting a lineup as Vince Williams, Jalen Wells, Cedric Howard, who's already good on defense as a rookie, Jaren Jackson, and Zach Edey, there are no weak links in that lineup. Those are 5 really good defenders.
Yes, and it shows in the numbers.
Yeah.
That lineup has been one of the very best defensive lineups in the NBA this season, and it's been really effective. And I would continue to use it. Like I would continue to use it even as you return players because, that's proven to be very, very effective. Okay. Real or not real? This Cam Spencer thing.
Well, let's back up. Where are you on the Jaren stuff?
I agree with mostly everything that you said. And I've noted several places that I thought some of the frustrations early in the season, back when all that drama was taking place and it was the talk of the NBA, is like, our Memphis stars happy and all that. Like I sensed some frustration from Jaren just inward, right? Just like, I can play better than this, and not necessarily outward, but inward. And so I land more on that this is on him. And he is capable of playing better, and I think he will play better this season because he's not a player that you worry about like checking out, you know? You don't worry about like the long term with him quite as much. So I think he'll play better, but if you're making me take one of the two pathways, I honestly think it's probably more Jaren is frustrated that he's not playing well, and he's probably frustrated with himself to some degree, which is understandable. But you know, there's time here, and like you said, maybe that Portland game is a chance to be sort of a move in the right direction for him. But I'm with you on offense sort of being secondary to the defense with him too, especially as they sort of find ways to score and the what the Grizzlies can do offensively changes so much when they do have like a lob threat and they have somebody that can find a lob threat because they can put so much more pressure on the rim. And when they didn't have that ability, I think that was something that really sort of hurt Jaren because there was no threat on a duck in pass, right? If the point guard is driving to the basket. And so having Vince, who deserves a ton of credit for the way he's been able to find Zach Edey and that connection. That's been a really interesting connection, maybe something that we didn't see coming. To have a threat beside Jaren that can score on the interior that's respected that way, I think makes a big difference. And I think it'll help him eventually find some success on the offensive end. But I want him to score efficiently. Like, I don't need him to take every shot anyway. I do need him to be an impact player on defense every single possession because he's capable of that. So I mostly agree with everything that you had to say on the Jaren stuff. But I want to go on to Cam Spencer here, real or not real. I mean, how do you say it's not real? The guy just keeps putting up double-digit points in every single game off the bench. And that was another theme of that Portland game was like a really good night for the bench. It's funny that like the success of Cam Spencer is like, and him finally like popping in the league is happening as his brother does the exact same thing for Golden State. So that's been kind of fun to watch. And I think this sort of signals why the Grizzlies made the decision that they did this summer to like keep him because maybe it's a little cliche and whatever, but like Cam is in the gym nonstop. Like he's somebody that they know is very dependable in terms of trying to improve. And that sounds like coach speak. It sounds like front office speak, and I get it. But I do think there is something to that. That there's like he's so intense about it and so professional about it that they like that they couldn't have viewed that as a bad investment in a player like that because they had faith that eventually he was going to get to this point. I think we're starting to see sort of the fruits of that labor a little bit. And I mean, again, it sounds like coach speak, but I do think that matters. And I've just been impressed with what he's able to do late in games. Like I think there are certain players that you want to take shots late in games, and he is a player that is capable of to some degree getting a shot, and he's a player that is not afraid of taking the big shots, and he's been able to give them minutes at 10 or good minutes at 10 points of the game. And I think that he's more than just like I'm going to fill some spot minutes here and there in the first half and I'm a 3-point specialist. Like he's become more than that. And I think that that's really meaningful for the Grizzlies. And I think it's real. I think this is the Cam that the Grizzlies are going to continue to get.
I think the skill growth for him has been crucial, and sort of chicken or the egg, the skill growth and the confidence. It seems like they've been feeding off of each other a little bit, but use the phrase 3-point specialist, and that was my concern about him coming into the league. Was as good of a shooter as he is, and he might be one of the best shooters in the league. As good of a shooter as he is at his size and with his athleticism, if he is only a 3-point specialist, you're just not going to be able to stay on the floor that much. You're going to be more of a novelty act, situational spot minute guy. I think he had to be someone who could impact the game in other ways, be on top of the 3-point shooting. And that's really where he's shown the growth is he's playing backup point guard. Basically, he's been closing games at point guard a lot over Vince Williams. He's shown that growth as a guy who can get at least into the mid range, if not all the way to the rim, get to the mid range and make decisions and make shots. He can score in the mid range. He can pass. He can pass from the mid range. He can drive and kick. He can find cutters. He can run pick and roll. He can just do all this stuff with the ball except beyond just catch it and shoot it. I think that's been crucial for him. So I've become a believer and a fan. I will say, to stay in character maybe a little bit, my one tap the brakes on this one would be, I do think the schedule this has happened against is notable, and I'll be interested to see him against better teams and him against teams where the secret's out on him a little bit. And so if you have better teams making a point to try to exploit him and go after him when he's on the floor, to try to exacerbate the weaknesses, to undercut the strengths, I think that's something I'm interested to see how that goes. Because I think that will happen, and how he reacts to that, how the team reacts to that, and how he holds up in those kind of situations is something I'm a little bit of wait and see on. But I'm extremely impressed with what he's shown this season.
Okay, I want to keep playing this game, move onward. We still have some players, including Ja, we should talk about. But first, let's take a break for a message from our sponsor.
Want to make a big impact without getting lost in a big system? Join Youth Villages to be a force for families while becoming part of one. Help make positive changes on a national scale, one community at a time. It takes a family to transform lives. Start with yours. Apply now at youthvillages.org/careers.
Before we get to Ja, which will be big news, and there was a little bit of Ja news that came out this morning, let's talk Vince Williams, your favorite guy to talk about, I feel like. I had the chance to make it down to a practice last week, which was nice to get back in the building a little bit. And Vince got asked a lot of questions at practice about his role, about his fits, about his chemistry with Zach Edey and how that sort of came to be. I asked him a little bit about his point guard background, which honestly, I was surprised to learn not much of it prior to this stint. Even at the high school level, usually a player like Vince, who was I believe, 3-time high school player of the year in his region, like usually when a high school has a player of that magnitude and you're the best player on your team, you play point guard. They just put the ball in your hands as much as possible. Was a little surprised to learn that wasn't necessarily the case with Vince. But one thing I noted, and I guess the real or not real is like point guard Vince we can play. One thing I noted was he said, he got asked about that role, and he said, point blank, this is the role I want to play. I hope I keep playing this. This is the role I want to play. That will obviously change as some players come back. But do you think that they have found the best positional fit for Vince Williams Jr. On this team? Should he have the ball that way?
I'm just gonna stick with a maybe on this. I'm a little torn on this one. I would say that he's the guy who I've compared a little bit to another one of my personal favorites, Kyle Anderson, and that Kyle's not really a point guard, but he's good with the ball, and he's an erratic outside shooter. So he helps you more with the ball than playing off the ball. There's a little bit of that aspect to it. I think there's a similar thing with Vince there. I think having him at point guard, to flip it around to what we were just talking about, if he's your point guard, that helps your defense. Because now instead of like a weaker, smaller defender at point guard, you have an awesome defender at point guard, which elevates the whole team defense. And I think he's developed some real chemistry with Edey, as we've seen. He's also had he sort of regressed a little bit in the stretch. Like he's had a bad last couple games. I think that there's been multiple games where they've really leaned more into Cam Spencer down the stretch of close games. When you're choosing between the offense and the defense, you're choosing the offense there. And so when Ja Morant comes back, and at some point a month from now, Ty Jerome's going to come back, and then there's a whole other thing. Let's just stick to now. Like, let's say there's another month before Ty Jerome comes back. Ja's back. You got to navigate the next month. Ordinarily, you would say, well, this guy's been the starting point guard, so now your starting point guard comes back. He becomes the backup point guard. That's the conventional way this would go. I'm not so sure because Cam Spencer's been so good in that backup point guard role. I sort of feel like Cam's going to stay there. And then you have a real question of, in terms of your other perimeter players in your rotation off the bench, you have a Vince Williams, John Conchar, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope question. Caldwell-Pope has been better lately. And Conchar has been really helpful in that role he's in. So does one of those three guys get squeezed out? You would think maybe it's Conchar. He's been sort of the 10th man. Or does he go to 11-man rotation and keep those guys in? If you're playing Cam and Vince both off the bench, like, who's the point guard, right? Are you playing them together? Are you splitting it up? I don't know if they can keep him in a quote-unquote point guard role. I'm talking about Vince Williams. I think he'll have the ball some, but I don't know if he will be as much of a point guard now with Ja Morant back as he was with Ja out.
I agree. I agree with all that you said on him positionally. To stick up for Vince a little bit, there is a twinge of the Dylan Brooks, like, you gotta let Dylan be Dylan. You're gonna get some good Dylan. You're also gonna get some bad Dylan, and that's part of the experience.
Yeah,
that's part of the Vince experience.
Oh,
right?
I agree.
It's part of the Vince experience too. There's some of that, like those agent of chaos players. That happens. One skill that I've been really impressed with, and it's like a really underrated thing, and it seems really simple, but it really matters in the NBA. And you hear people talk about this a lot when it comes to point guard play, is the ability to pass the ball with both hands. Like, it seems so simple, right? But it matters a lot. And that was like one of the traits that the Grizzlies saw in Javon Small when they drafted him, who's obviously not been, part of this recent run, but like, that was, I know it's something that the Grizzlies value when it comes to point guards. Vince is really good at that. Like, Vince has some real skill with passing the ball with both hands, but he is an agent of chaos. There's going to be some pluses. There's going to be some really high pluses. We've seen it. And there's going to be some low lows. And I still think he's got to be part of things,
He has some particularly notable bad pass turnovers. Like, it seems like he's good for one or two of those a game. Sure. Where those, it seems like a particularly lazy or miss. He'll have 17 assists and he'll have a couple of turnovers that are real groaners.
Yeah, no, that is part of the Vince experience. But there's, you can't allow a couple of negative plays to take away from some of the positive plays. And you're right. It's been a rough couple of games, but I think he's shown enough. Talk about real or not real. He's shown enough. He needs to just be on the court for this team.
So what's your rotation when Ja comes back?
I think I'm playing 11.
I think I probably would. It gets tricky because already you're playing some guys maybe not as many minutes as you might like. But I don't know how you take any of those 11. I don't know how you just DNP them right now.
If you're squeezing out Conchar.
Yeah.
I think that's the route you have to go. But he's solid, right? Like, just to revisit the Conchar thing real quick. It is a trait that is of value in the NBA to have a player where you know what you're going to get from them on a night. Like, to not do too much. We talk about Vince sometimes doing too much. To not do too much is also a trait that matters. It's a level of dependability. It's a reliability that they know when they play John exactly what they're going to get. So, yeah, I think I'm playing 11, but if you're going to squeeze one out, I think that's what you have to do. Okay, onward to Ja. We got news this morning that Ja is buying 250 tickets that they're going to give away down at FedExForum. I believe they're giving them away on Wednesday I'm double checking. They're going to give them away on Wednesday at 2 p.m. inside the grand lobby of FedExForum. First come, first served basis, limit of 2 tickets per adult. So if this pod is out before then, which I'm not sure if it will be or not, go get your free tickets. They're also doing an offer where they're selling tickets for $12 for 12-12 against the Utah Jazz. Sure seems like Ja's coming back against the Utah Jazz,
Yeah,
don't you think, given
you
that
can't
news?
you can't quite say go see 12 on 12-12 because a guy could always something could happen between now and then. You don't. There's a reason they don't put out an injury report until closer to game time, but clearly that's the plan.
Given the fact that the team is playing a lot better, I mean, what do you want? It's hard to say to Ja like fit in. You want to just say go out there and play like Ja. Um, but how does he change things?
It's going to be really, really interesting watching him
It is.
reintegrate after the way they played without him, after all the drama, and then after just how poorly he was playing. And there's just so much focus on it. I think it's going to be super interesting. If he goes out there and forces a bunch of shots and he's missing them and like throws off the chemistry, obviously that's a bad thing. At the same time, I don't think it's just like you got to go fit in and be a cog in the system. Because guess what? I know they're 7-2 in their last nine. They're still ranked 25th in the NBA on offense this season. They
Mhm.
don't need Ja to fit in and like be Vince Williams. They need him to be Ja Morant. And so they need him to score. They need him to create easy shots. They need him to get them in transition and make them more dynamic in terms of getting easy baskets. And they need to try to blend that dynamism he can bring on offense with the team defense they've been playing. And part of that is like don't distract too much from the defense, right? So it's going to be really interesting, but it's not as simple as like like go be invisible and go be Vince Williams out there. That is not what they need.
No, it's definitely not that. I remember, I don't remember exactly when, but there was some of that during this Grizzlies superstar sort of era. I remember when Tyus Jones was playing really well and Ja was out for extended time and he came
Yeah,
back and he was just trying to sort of blend in with what they were doing.
right.
Can't, yeah, no, they need Ja to be Ja. I agree 100%. It is, it's fascinating to think about how it's all going to fit together because it does change the dynamic quite a bit when he's on the court. I think it changes it doesn't what you hope doesn't change is that Ja gets on the court and there's immediately that same connection with Edey. And I don't think you necessarily worry about that, but it feels like, Edey has played so well and you
And they have
want that
played.
confidence to continue, right? And I think Ja, you hope, is going to be somebody that can drive that forward even more because of his ability to pass. So it'll be
Well,
interesting.
this is a key thing to remember. Ja got injured. The calf injury happened in the first quarter of Edey's first game back. They've played 4.5 minutes together this season. Like that's it. And part of the whole idea of Edey, when they drafted him, part of the whole idea was his fit with Ja Morant. And now you've got a better look at Edey. And so there's a lot of potential there that's really enticing to see those guys play together.
What do you make of the timing? Sooner than you thought? Later than you thought? What do you
Oh,
make of
and
the timing?
no,
Just about right?
yeah, probably about right. I mean, it was a lower grade calf injury, right? If anything, maybe it's a game or so later, but they have this 4 game gap between this game and the last one. That's a pretty enticing thing to like take the extra 4 days, right? So maybe that's sort of part of it. So not earlier than expected, and but not maybe slightly later than I expected, but it feels about right.
Yeah, and I sort of was of the thinking on the Ja calf stuff. Like, if you look at the schedule, and obviously they've been able to get some wins here, but like Utah at home, then you get the Clippers, then Minnesota on the road, then the Wizards at home after that. I kind of was like, if there's ever a time to just take your time here and just sort of make sure he's 100% ready to go when he comes back, it is kind of right now because as we've mentioned a whole bunch of times, like part of this season is evaluating like what you have on the floor this year and like Ja and Edey is a massive thing. It's maybe the number one thing that you're trying to figure out. And so, like, let's make sure that that's at full strength when we put it on the court. So I almost was like, just take your time on this one, Ja. Just, make sure that you're good to go when you get back out there. The team's been winning a fair amount, without him out there anyway. So, but obviously, if he's coming back knowing the way that the Grizzlies typically handle things, it seems like he must be ready to go and at full strength. So you look at the standings now, Chris. You've got the Grizzlies. What? How many games out of sixth? You have the Grizzlies 4 games behind Minnesota, a game and a half behind Golden State, and 3 games behind Phoenix, who's in seventh. I mean, this
Minnesota,
is sort of the range we.
Minnesota, by the way, doing the Grizzlies no favors. I mean, maybe you're focused on trying to get to 6 and catch Minnesota. But I'm really focused on the Grizzlies being better than the Suns at the end of the season, and for both standings purposes and draft purposes. Minnesota has now lost 2 close games to
Yeah.
Phoenix. They lost a game in Phoenix where they were up by 8 points with like 40 seconds to play and lost the game somehow. And then they lose a tight one, like 1 or 2 point game or whatever it was last night at home to the Suns. Minnesota not they have not been clutch for the Grizzlies against the Suns.
And the Lakers, both.
Yeah.
Lakers dropped that game. I mean, Phoenix has been frustrating if you're
Yeah.
invested in them being bad because you looked at the roster before the season and you kind of went, it doesn't look that bad, but it's never really worked, so why should I believe it's going to
Right.
work? And so I don't know. I don't know what to make of them still. Like I'm starting to, you know, I think it might have been a week or 2 weeks ago when they were sort of like playing really well, and people were pointing out, hey, Phoenix is all of a sudden might be real, and I was like, well, let's check back on this in a couple weeks, looking at the schedule, and
Yeah.
they've hung tough the whole time. So I don't know what to make of Phoenix at this point.
I think a lot of little things have worked out for them, and those little things have added up. And Colin Gillespie has been one of the finds of the league, and he's given them real point guard play in a way that, frankly, they didn't get from former Grizzly Tyus Jones. Like, he's been a real revelation for them at point guard. Obviously, Dylan Brooks has brought a lot of feistiness and defense and belief there. They took a chance on Mark Williams, who the Lakers sort of reneged on trading for, and he's sort of give them a real presence in the middle. Their new head coach has them playing like more solid basketball with better effort. And like Jalen Green got hurt and hasn't really played. And I don't know, man, not to be down on Jalen Green, but maybe that's helped them from a chemistry standpoint, right? Because it felt like, that felt very similar to last year's Suns, just a bunch of guys who need to shoot and like don't really fit. And taking Green out of the mix has maybe helped them just be a little bit more coherent. I still continue to believe they're going to slip down the standings, but I don't think they're going to slip out of the play-in. I think they're going to be a play-in team somewhere.
I'm looking at the standings right now on the ESPN app, and I'm wondering how this could possibly be right. I'm looking at the standings. This is bad podcasting. Phoenix is 14-10 on the season.
Yep.
It says they're 13-9 in the conference. Have they really not played a team in the East?
Oh, I haven't noticed that. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, if so,
I
that
mean, they've won that. I mean, that means they've basically played all West, not fully, but basically played all West competition.
now that I think about it, I can't think about it like every Phoenix game I can think of. I mean, we just mentioned their games against Minnesota and their games against the Lakers, and I can't in my head I don't see them playing any East team. So maybe that's true.
Well, that's obviously not good.
No, no, it's
Because
really not.
that means they're going to play a lot of East teams in the future.
They do play the Thunder next, so
Yeah.
in
There's
the cup.
opportunity there with the Jazz playing the Grizzlies too. You got to take care of the Jazz in the likely Ja Morant return game. Um, yeah. Wow. That's shocking that they've played so many games in the West already this season. But hey, man, they're better than you thought. The Grizzlies being in this play-in mix is kind of where everybody thought they would be. Real or
Yeah.
not real, they have a chance to sneak into the top six this season.
I think they have a chance. I think that's a worthy goal to pursue. I don't think it's likely. But they have a chance. Yeah, they have a chance. That should be their focus. That should be their focus. That should be their goal. That's a real goal. 4 games back with 60 to go or whatever it is. That's a real goal. But I don't have a lot of confidence in that.
Tomas Isolo would not be in favor of that goal. It's really interesting to hear his coach speak philosophy stuff. I do find it to be interesting, and I end up using it a lot, and a lot of the quotes are really long. But you know, he hates the "what have you done for me lately"
Right. Right.
sort of notion that exists in the NBA. That's very evident. But, so he from practice, the vibe was, yeah, we're playing better, but don't ask me if we're improved. We're trying to improve every day.
Right.
Um, so you can't just come in after every game and be like, well, so are you improved now? And he seemed to be very frustrated by that. So I found it to be interesting that it was, I mean, he was in a good mood, but it was almost like the response to like improvement is testy because he's so worried about like complacency. So found that stuff to be interesting. I agree. I think it's a worthy goal. It's a worthy goal. It's not
I,
likely when
I
you
think,
lose.
I mean, before you get to 6, you got to get to 8 or 7, right? And I think that matters a lot
Yeah,
because
because you avoid Oklahoma
you're trying
City.
to, that's right. You're trying to avoid Oklahoma City. So at a minimum, you want to move up into that 7-8 play-in game and give yourself a chance to win and face someone other than Oklahoma City in the playoffs at minimum.
Um, OKC's 23-1 on the season. This is
Yeah.
interesting to me. This is a team that is 23-1 on the season. Obviously, they're going to have a chance to break some records, some regular season win
Oh,
records.
by the way, they are 19-1 in conference, so 20 of their 24
I
games have been
know.
against the West.
So, but we don't even talk like you don't see much. There's not all that. Are they just that uninspiring as a team? Like they're like literally one of the best teams in NBA history. They're going to be one of the best teams in NBA history, barring like some catastrophic injury stuff. And like they just are not talked about like that. Why? Why? Is
I
it
mean,
because
part of it's
they don't have
market.
Kevin Durant? Like I don't know.
Part of it's market, and part of it is they don't have. Even though Shea is the reigning MVP and reigning scoring leader and reigning Finals MVP, hat trick. Um, he's not that big of a personality. He's a little bit of a personality. He's getting the commercials, whatever. No one else on their team is at all. I mean, their other co-stars, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. Williams hasn't played much. They are not big personalities, and they are not in a big market. And then their style of play is very. They just have like the best defense ever, and that sort of just grinds teams down every night. And then like there's no novelty to it because they just won last year. So you can see how all that lines up. Even still, yes, they should be getting more attention.
I also gotta say, looking behind Memphis, and maybe I'm jinxing this, like I just don't see Memphis falling out of the play-in. Those teams behind them are bad, bad. I mean,
Yeah,
the Clippers are like the only one that you might have a little faith
the
could
Dallas thing is
pull out.
interesting because they've been better lately, and they Anthony Davis back. If Anthony Davis stayed healthy and they decided we're not trading him, I think the Dallas team could because I don't think Portland's that good, frankly. So I could see Portland dropping out and like maybe Dallas moving up. But I think Dallas is going to trade Anthony Davis, and I think they're going to go the other way with it. And so yeah, I mean, someone's got to get past Portland before they get to Memphis at this point. And I agree with you. I don't want to say like 9 is the floor, which is where they are now. But I think if the Grizzlies stay reasonably healthy and things don't combust, I kind of have a hard time seeing them being lower than the 9 where they are now.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will wrap it up for this week. We didn't get to our. Let's before we check out. There's more to life than basketball. It is the end of the year, Chris. Are you like compiling? I'm sorry because I haven't been able to really keep up with your radio stuff as quite as much. I'm waking up later now, doing the night shift with the baby.
Yeah.
Um, are you making compiling lists and stuff for music and movies and all that sort of thing?
I'm always compiling lists. That's what I do. That's like my hobby is
Well,
compiling
I
lists.
know. We know it because we see your lists of the top 25 Grizzlies players for the
Yeah, yeah.
anniversary. We see that all the time. But like,
So in terms of public consumption, like
what's at the top? What's at the top of your lists
well,
this year?
I'm not going to do that on the Grizzlies pod.
Well, no, I mean,
Before
like
I
you don't
write.
have to give it all away. Just give us a couple that you liked. Give me a year in review on some of like. Don't give it all away, but like give us something.
Well, I was going to say I will. I vote. I am a member of a film critics group. We vote on Friday, so I've been binge watching a lot of movies the last couple weeks. And then I will do a year in movie list in written form for the Daily Memphian sometime this month. And then I'm doing a second Grizzlies mailbag part 2 this week. And I did get a question in the Grizzlies mailbag about my favorite albums of the year. I don't otherwise have an outlet to do a year in music thing like I used to. So I'm just going to do a top 10 list and just put it there at the very end of like the 2,500 word mailbag. If you get to the end, that'll be a little thing there. In terms of movies, I am on the record like loving One Battle After Another and loving Sinners.
Me too.
So One Battle After Another and Sinners will definitely be in my top 10. Probably pretty high in my top 10 of movies of the year. And then there'll be some other stuff in there that hasn't come out yet. And at least one thing that came out a long time ago and just never played Memphis for some reason. So, but that'll be out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Do you watch Christmas movies or no?
It depends on what you mean by that, right?
Are you getting in the Christmas spirit by watching?
I'm not watching
this.
I'm not watching like the straight to Netflix Hallmark kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No. There's a theater here in actually in Minneapolis, but close to where I live in St. Paul. There's a great old mid-century modern theater, the Riverview Theater, that does a big Christmas series every year. And last year, the kids and I went to see It's a Wonderful Life there. That was a great experience. That's a favorite of mine. Meet Me in St. Louis, which is not specifically a Christmas film because it takes place over the course of it takes place over the course of an entire year. So there's like Halloween, and it includes the whole year. But it's thought of as a Christmas movie because that is the movie that introduces the song "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," sung by Judy Garland, in a great scene in that movie. That's one of my very favorite movies.
I'll eventually get around to watching a couple. I do watch some of the cheesy ones. I'll watch The Grinch once.
Elf, you seen Elf?
Of course.
Yeah, Elf's a favorite.
Funny story. This is a true story, and I'm going to embarrass myself on the podcast. I went to Florida last year to do Christmas. My parents live in Sarasota. Once their kids, left the house, they decided to get a place down there. They're not retired yet or anything, but they wanted the warm weather. And we went down there, and we all went out to last year to the local bar around the corner. And my mom was insistent that we wear these Christmas costumes to the bar. And no one wanted to do it. Everybody was like, no, we're not doing that. My sister was like, Mom, we're not doing that. That's embarrassing. My mom basically bullied everybody into doing it. And my costume was a full Buddy the Elf costume. I was wearing the yellow tights and everything. And at one point, I was just messing around crossing the street outside of the bar, jumping on the things. And some guy rolled his window down and said, "Bye, buddy. I hope you find your dad." And everybody in the surrounding area was dying laughing. Yeah, wow. That's a Christmas memory. That was tough.
When you walked into the restaurant and the greeter was there, the maitre d' or whatever, the greeter was there to seat you, did you point at this person and say, "You sit on a throne of lies"?
Congratulations, world's best cup of coffee. You know? No, I didn't do that. I tried to keep it low key, but that's a little hard to do when you're in yellow tights and you're a little bit more heavy set than Will Ferrell. So. Right. But no. Yeah, what a good Christmas memory that was. Oh my goodness. No costumes this year. I will not allow it. But that'll do it for us this week. We will be back next week. We'll be talking about the Ja Morant return game, we think. So that will be fun. Until next time, for Drew and for Chris, we're out of here.